Well, hello, this is Vincent Green, and we're going to continue our look at the foundation of exposition. We're in these modules, this final set of four modules, modules 13, 14, 15, 16, where we're talking about the design of a persuasive exposition, and we're dealing with the how to compose what I call the sermon or teaching lesson document. And we've been looking at in module 13 everything related to the introduction. I walked through all the steps of the introduction, but today we're going to look at the body. Now, I was originally thinking this could be two videos, but I think I'm just going to do all in one, so we'll see how long it takes to go through all of these parts. But in terms of the body of the sermon, this is where you bring in the how element. So I don't want to repeat things that I've said in the last two videos that appear in module 13. I just want to pick up where we left off and where the next step would be. Now, in terms of the amount of time that you will spend working on this part of the process of designing a sermon document or teaching document, this will be the most time that will be demanded from you. So that's why I'm giving this two modules. So it gives you a little bit extra time to work on this, but it's gonna devote a lot of time to this in terms of what you need to compose on paper. But let me go through all of this with you. The body of the sermon is where you bring in the how element, and remember the how element is the statements. It's kind of like the outline. I mean, sometimes that's what we call it. But I like to connect it with the what, why, how. So the what and the why. What is the author talking about? Why is he addressing that subject? The how element talks about it from the vantage point of how does the author go about the process of showing us what the why is and what the what and the why is. So again, that's going back to the basic Foundations of Exegesis course that we had previously. Now, for my example, remember the what is unfaithfulness, the why is result, and I've integrated all of those two concepts together and worked that through the introduction to the sermon. Now I want to focus on the how statements. And so for this passage in Isaiah, again, we looked at this back when we did synthesis in the Foundations of Exegesis course. So I want to now expand upon those and design and compose the body of my sermon. This is where I'm going to spend the most time in terms of the minutes. If I teach or preach through a passage that's 45 minutes to 50 minutes, the bulk of my time is going to be in the body of the sermon. And so I'm going to be doing it that way. I'm going to work through it in that way. And I want you to see this, how this would look. So in terms of the body of the sermon, the two how statements that I came up with as I studied this passage was the indictment of their unfaithfulness and the verdict of their unfaithfulness. And notice that the wording of these, this is going back to what we learned in Foundations of Exegesis. This is what was appearing in the Foundations of Exegesis course under synthesis. When I wrote these statements in such a way that they connect back to the what and the why. So the indictment and the verdict represent the results of unfaithfulness. So what is the result of unfaithfulness? Well, Isaiah tells us. The Lord gives that message to him, and he tells it to us. We see the indictment of their unfaithfulness and then the verdict of it. So what I'm doing in the actual body of the sermon is expanding on that, walking through that. Now, let me kind of give you an idea of what that will look like. So in the body of the sermon, you're going to have how statement number 1, and then you'll have how statement number 2, and then how statement number 3. You kind of repeat the process. So what you're seeing here is going to be repeated time after time after time after time. And so what you find is that in the development of your how statements, there are different kinds of things that you're going to say. Everything that you're going to say will either be an explanation statement, an illustration statement, or an application statement. And you're going to see how this looks in terms of the example that I'm going to provide for you. But just so you know, explanation statements, which will be the primary type of statements that are made, explanation statements, they show how your text is the basis for the principles you state in your outline. They're going to point to specific words, specific phrases. They're going to help your hearers understand the details of the passage. Now, where did you get those details? Where did you record those details? Well, you recorded them in your synthesis. That's why the synthesis is the very important step. Then you have illustration. Illustrations clarify the textual truths with various images or stories that connect your hearers, your contemporary hearers. Let me say it that way, contemporary hearers to the teaching of the passage. Okay? And so you want to be aware of that. That's what illustrations do. And then application, they show how to put the principles of the passage to work. They deal with attitudes of people, behavior, speech, lifestyle, personal identity, appeals to the conscience, to the values, to the conviction, to their commitment to Christ. And so these are the types of statements. It's pretty basic, to be honest. But but what I want to do is show you how I build this. Now, when I go to my Isaiah passage, and let me walk you through, let me get you down to where we start the body. I have the how statement, how number 1 statement, the indictments of their unfaithfulness. And then I had a series of indictments. And the first one is, in verse 21a, God's first indictment centers in their manifest disloyalty. Now, where did I get this info from? Where did I get this outline from? Where did I get all these details? Notice all of these statements here. Notice all of this. You see all of this? Where did I get that from? I could type it just from nothing, but you know what I did? I got it from my synthesis. What I did was I took everything I had written here. You see why I wrote it in an outline format? Everything that I wrote here, what I did was I copied and pasted into here. And all I had to do was change the wording so that they were more statements that I would express. That's why the synthesis becomes the bridge to your sermon. More specifically, it becomes the bridge in how you compose the body of your sermon. That's why this is a necessary step back in the Foundations of Exegesis course. You may not realize it up until this point, but there was a reason for putting together your synthesis document in this detailed format that I showed you. And when we get to exegetical method 1, you're going to have 2 passages that you're going to be working on, that you're going to have to do detailed exegetical synthesis statements or documents, okay? And you're going to have time to work on that. And this is going to become obvious in exegetical method 2, is when you'll have these series of assignments. And you will put together a full-fledged synthesis of the passage you've been studying. And that will help you in working towards the body of the sermons. I just took this information and I highlighted it, just like you're seeing me do right now. I highlighted the info, everything I had, copied it, and then I pasted it into here. And I even took their, like, indictment number 1, manifested disloyalty, and I made a statement out of that. Then I took all that details and then I converted that to statements of how I could express the content of what I had studied. Now, sometimes I may have deleted something from the synthesis to the document to the sermon document. I may have even added more. Something else could have come to my mind that wasn't there when I did the synthesis. But if I do the synthesis well, if I put the synthesis together in a good way and put all those details there, summarize everything, then when I go to compose the body of my sermon, then I have a lot of information. I have a lot of content that I can communicate that will make sense. So notice, though, when I do compose these as actual statements, like, do you see where it says Jerusalem, the capital city, government location? Well, what I did was I put Jerusalem as the capital city of the nation. It represents where the government was located. You see, I made those little bit of synthesis notes. I converted those into statements that I could say. Well, I had to make a decision on what kind of statements, everything I'm going to say, what kind of statement it is. Is it an explanation statement? Is it an illustration? Is it an application? Okay? I have to decide what it is. And so the way I do that, the way I show that, is no matter at what level in my little outline kind of writing it is, I put the letter E for explanation. So you see there's a lot of explanation type language here. And then here's this is some illustration here. And then I'm back to explaining, and then here's more illustrations, and then I get into some application, another illustration before I go to my next one, which is verse 21b. Then I start the whole process over. So it's not like you do all of your explanation, then do all of your illustration, then do all of your application, and do it in that order. It's that they may come at different places and at different times. It's that no matter what you say when you say it, you need to define the nature of each statement as either being an explanation statement, an illustration statement, or an application statement. That's how you do this. And again, I'm just building this document from my synthesis. So if I do my synthesis really well, it doesn't take forever to write or to compose my sermon body because I've already done most of the work in the synthesis. All I have to do is just kind of flesh it out to be more statements of the way I would say it if I was speaking it to someone. Which that's what your sermon really is. It's not what's in paper form. It's what you actually orally deliver. So this is the bridge. The synthesis document is the bridge that will get you to the place where you can compose your sermon in such a way that you can have it in some kind of format where it will make sense to you as you read through it to prepare yourself and your heart for the message that you're going to preach. And so this is what you want to be aware of. The link between the synthesis to the sermon body, the body part of the document. And so even though this is the body takes up the most space in the document, it's not as difficult to design because you're not starting from zero. You're building from your synthesis. See, that's why you have to know two things. For your sermon, you have to have the what, why, and how. That represents the structure of your sermon. But all of this represents the details. And the details are packaged. It's like this is the bones and this is the flesh that goes around it. So you need to have access to all of those details. And that's what your synthesis document is. And it helps me to put this together in a format so that I can word things in such a way that are going to help people understand what the passage is about and how it's important to them. So I got to think explanation, I have to think illustrations, and I have to think of application. That's how all of this works. That's how I'm working through all of this and putting all of this together. Now, once I get that one done, I start over again. Now I'm working on chapter 1, verse 21b. There's my second indictment. And again, I got explanation statements. No matter, I do write in a form of an outline. Um, I did that for the synthesis because I like these are statements that are made in the passage, right? And then these are explanation statements or whatever they may be to help me understand these phrases and how I want to understand it. Well, this is the way in which I would communicate to others what I've understood. So I would talk about the word justice. I would talk about the word home. That's in verse 21b, the second part of that verse. Um, and then I would give illustrations. I have other passages that I could go to and develop this even with even more detail. Now, when I put all this detail in this document, it doesn't mean I'm going to present all of it in a sermon. Um, I may would if I did take this document into the podium, into the pulpit. What I'd probably do is I would have a highlighter, and I may highlight certain ones, things that I think, okay, if like I got 12 items here, right? I have 12 items here underneath the word righteousness, and a lot of it is explanation related, but then I have an illustration one there. So maybe I would highlight this one for sure because that would be good to give some kind of illustration. But I may would go through here and just highlight some of the ones of the statements that I need to say. And so that would be in the process of taking your finalized document and reading through it before you would enter the pulpit on Sunday. You would be doing this on Saturday. You wouldn't be composing this on a Saturday. You would kind of be walking through it just to do the final preparation for how you would get ready for the sermon, oral delivery time on the next day. And I'll talk more about that part of the sermon process in the final lesson, Module 16. Um, I'll talk about how you can practically implement this process into a schedule. How you can take exegesis and exposition, all the things that I've been teaching you in Foundations of Exegesis, Foundations of Exposition, and make that work for you in a pattern of weekly exposition from the pulpit. But the point I want to show you here is that what you want to do is you want to begin to work through all of your synthesis. Take your synthesis. You say, well, I didn't do a synthesis. That's true. You most likely did not do a synthesis for your ministry clinic sermons. And so what I want you to do is don't worry about grabbing from a synthesis to put in the body this time. When we do the exegetical method 1 and 2 courses in the second year of the program, you will work through all of that. You will have a completed synthesis before you do a sermon document. So you will have that. But for this assignment, you don't have that because you don't. You didn't. I didn't require you to do that beforehand. So I want you to just build this from scratch, from nothing. After you have the introduction done, and hopefully by now you've gotten that part done, now you're working on the body of the sermon. You want to be able to, uh, start writing out statements, and everything's either an explanation statement, an illustration statement, or an application type statement, and work through the process. What I've done here is I've given you an example to look at so you can kind of see how this works. You want to write it in more of a kind of an outline style. Now, I didn't do the whole sermon. I would do the same process for here's the third indictment, the fourth indictment, there's the fifth indictment, and then you have the house statement number 2, the verdict, which spans verse 24 to 31. And so that would be another detailed list. And you say, well, this looks like a long sermon. In actuality, most likely this would not, I could make this one sermon and just summarize a lot of things. Most likely this would be a 2 to 3 part sermon. Is probably what this would wind up being if I fleshed it out in an actual church setting. I'd probably take at least 3 weeks, maybe even 4 to work through it. But This looks more like a 3-week sermon series, but I'm using this again just to give you an example of how to think through. I want to expose you. In the Foundations course, I'm just trying to give you an exposure to writing a sermon document. We're going to be doing this much more as we move forward in our second year, third year, and fourth year of the program. But but I wanted to present all of this to you, get this in front of you, so that you know what to do, or at least become acquainted with what you need to do. I'm not looking for perfection here, but I want you to begin as you've done through the introduction and work through those steps. My hope is that in the Foundations course, I want you to be more aware of these categories, or steps. We call them steps, and how these really are not steps. They're you can mix them. You know, they can show up at any time in the process of composing each house statement. These are 3 elements, if you want to call them like that. And then we have 2 steps for the conclusion. That's what we'll look at in Module 16. I want you to be more aware of this process. That's what my goal is in trying to present this to you now in the Foundations of Exposition course, and not wait another year to present this to you for the first time. I wanted to get this in front of you like I've done for the Foundations of Exegesis course, and get all of those aspects in front of you, all those steps of all those different kinds of analysis. I wanted to get that in front of you so that you're aware of it. And that's why I'm doing this. So take that ministry clinic passage that you worked on for the introduction, the same passage, same sermon, and I want you to develop it like I'm showing you here. Work through that passage as best as you can. You have a couple of weeks to work on this assignment. And so this will give you an example. You can look in your notes, go down to the final pages of your notes, and you'll see this example here. And you should be able to find it. And the page numbers actually may be different because when I'm making this video, I'm still developing the syllabus for the middle section of the course. So this video, all this material will be in the notes, but it's going to be at the very bottom of it, and so the page numbers may be different, even though the text material will be there. So at this point, I just want you to work through step by step, work on this body. You got some time, you got 2 weeks. Go back to one of your ministry clinic sermons, passages, the same one that you've been working on, the same one that you were working on in the introduction. You're going to work through the entire process of the sermon document with that one sermon from your ministry clinic course, either ministry clinic 1, ministry clinic 2. So whatever you started with, whatever passage you chose back when you started the introduction, you want to continue that in the body and work through that process. So anyway, that's where you want to be with all of this, and continue to work through it. If you have any questions, let me know. But use this as an example. Read through how I do this. But you're going to have explanation statements. You're going to have illustration type statements. Then you're going to have application type statements throughout here at different points in time. And so you just got to be aware of all of that. Okay? So there's no magic number. You're going to have so many explanation statements. Don't think of it like that. Just work through the passage the best you can. Work, your outline and putting all that together. I'd like for it to be a passage, not a topical sermon where you went to multiple passages, but working through one passage is what I would hope that you could work through. And as you put together the introduction and the body, but work on this, learn as much as you can of this, acquaint yourself with the different steps and parts of the introduction, the body. We'll do this for the conclusion in Module 16. So this is where we're at, okay? So I know it's a lot of work, but spend some time on this, a little bit each day. It's best to work a little bit each day, and you got, again, 2 modules. This is module 13. You also have module 14. There will not be any videos in module 14. This is the only video that'll be in module 13. And the assignment link will be in module 14, or the assignment submission part in the course will appear in module 14. I'm sorry, module 14 is this one. So module 14 and 15. So in module 14, you have the video. In module 15, that's when the assignment submission link is made available to post this. And what I want you to do is keep the introduction and the body in one document. I want you to put everything in one document. So when you submit the body, go ahead and submit the introduction again. Okay, it's all together. Just keep adding to the one document, okay, as you make this. And so in module 13, you submitted just the introduction part. Well, in module 15, you're going to submit again the introduction added into that same document, the body. And then in module 16, when we talk about the conclusion, you're going to have the introduction, the body, and conclusion all in one document. So you submit the whole thing. Does that make sense? So so work through it in that pattern. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. Well, let me pray for us. Dear Lord, as we work through the body of the sermon, Lord, we come and we ask your blessing upon our time in the process of putting together the sermon body, the bulk of the material of what we would communicate when we're standing before others and preaching and proclaiming your word. So, Lord, I pray your blessing be upon us in this process. We give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. So again, work through the body, add it to your introduction that you should hopefully have already completed, and continue to work through this, and then submit this to me, and then we will move on to the conclusion after that. And I have a typo I just saw there. So anyway, it's nice to be able to fix all these typos as I find them. So take care. God's blessings. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. And the next time we'll talk about the conclusion. So this is, you can see kind of what I've done here. The conclusion, there's 2 parts to this, so we'll work through this next time. Okay? Take care. See you in the next video.